Unique legacy pieces are some of the most important items that you could obtain in DC Dark Legion. In fact, most of our daily grind in the game, especially at the end game, is centered around obtaining magic eyes, which are the item that is needed to purchase unique legacy pieces from the House of Secrets. So it comes as no surprise that a large majority of the community ask a lot of questions about which unique legacy pieces they should be obtaining, how much to invest in them. They want to see tier lists on the legacy pieces. And I actually do have a tier list available for legacy pieces. I'll be updating that at some point in the month of August. But today's video is meant to be a practical lesson or maybe a thought experiment on what you should do once you have the magic eyes available to purchase a new legacy piece or upgrade one of your existing ones. Now you can see here from my legacy piece screen or the House of Secrets screen that I have all three of the Superman family unique legacies. I also have Eskrima sticks for my Nightwing. I have the Kuru pendant for Martian Manhunter, and I have the sigil for my Constantine. So my thought process for the last few weeks has been, once I get 200 magic eyes, I'm going for the star bolts for my Starfire, which will bolster her healing ability and kind of solidify my healing capabilities for my top three teams. I have been using Starfire a decent amount in combat cycle, and she's also going to be getting used in all of the PvP modes, especially the ones that require multiple ship lineups. So my initial thought was I should, continue to build out my unique legacy piece stable and just try to get as many of the unique legacy pieces on the top 15 champions in my roster as possible. The other compelling thing about the Star Bolts is, even though if you equip it on someone who isn't Starfire, even though Tamarin Arcs cannot be used because that is only activated when Starfire is using it, you can use Astral Blaze, which basically turns any non-healer into a healer, and it's also going to help any of your healing champions as well. So I guess the kind of cheese for this is that since Bat Family currently doesn't have a healer right now, Legion of Doom doesn't have a healer right now, you can equip this legacy piece to one of your support champions who kind of acts as a pseudo healer to keep the team alive for a little bit longer whenever you're doing your training sim battles or even potentially for PvP. But the other route that you can take whenever you're trying to build up your stable of unique legacy pieces is to bolster the ones that you already have. Let's assume that you have decided you're going to build your whole roster around Superman family as the primary team, because that's basically what I'm doing at this point. So you go ahead and you spend the first 600 magic eyes that you have on the three unique legacy pieces that make that team tick. So your Superman, Superboy, and Supergirl legacy pieces. At that point, you have a decision to make. Do I want to continue to buy unique legacy pieces for my next team? Let's say that you decided to go for Constantine for the Justice League Dark team, and that's sort of your second best squad that you use in a lot of the, PvP game modes and that sort of thing. You kind of have to decide, like, do I want to make my second team better by obtaining the sigil, which is an incredible legacy piece, by the way, and really helps Constantine's damage output? Or do you want to try to bolster that first team, which is probably the most important team in your roster, because you're probably also not just going to be using that team for PvP, but all the PvE experiences as well. Should you go back and focus in on one or two of those three first unique legacy pieces that you obtain? And that's kind of the crisis that I'm in with my account. Technically, I've sort of tried to pick out, at least early on, the most important damage dealers or the win conditions for several teams, and make sure that I have their unique legacy pieces on them so that they're able to put out that little bit of extra damage output. Now, I don't regret getting Constantine and Nightwing their unique legacy pieces. I definitely don't regret getting the Crew pendant for Martian Manhunter. But one thing that I've realized is some of these legacy items, really a lot of them, are heavily dependent on investment to the 5 white star stage or even the 5 blue star stage. I think Kuru Pendant is definitely one of those that fits that bill, where it's really going to require a lot of investment in that piece before you start getting much return from it. So you have to be careful with some of these. Now, I've talked to several of my friends who play the game, including a couple of whales, one that's pretty much one of the biggest krakens in the game at this point. And I've gotten some good feedback, some well-rounded feedback on what I should do. But ultimately, the decision that I've made is to upgrade Supergirl's unique legacy piece. For my account, that makes the most sense. Just looking at the kits and kind of what they're able to do, I think that we clearly know that if you heavily invest in Superman family, that Supergirl is one of the most busted champions in the game. Now, she's not really good on her own, but I know for my account, given the fact that I've invested in all of these other champions to support her and to support Superman family, that it will make a lot of sense to upgrade her legacy piece, and it's going to make her just that much better in the game. So what I'd like to do in this video is we're going to run a combat cycle fight, and we'll see the damage output that Supergirl is able to do with a 0-star version of her legacy piece. And then we're going to run that same battle after we've upgraded the legacy piece to 5 white. I have 200 magic eyes, so that's enough to get me to the 5 white level. And we'll see if we notice any differences in the amount of damage output. There should be a considerable difference. And we'll go over to my Supergirl just so that you can see what we're dealing with here. So at 0 stars, this legacy piece, and I talked about this in my Weller Skip video for Supergirl, so it's going to be a little redundant, but you know, you're going to get attack and HP for the primary gear effects, attack percentage and HP percentage. You're also going to be getting a lot of attack percentage from both of the legacy piece skills. Now, Raoul's Ascension is the one that's going to be upgraded first whenever you upgrade this legacy piece. The typical cadence for these things is the first skill is going to upgrade for the first 5 stars, and then when you go to the second 5, so you're blue, it's going to upgrade the second one, and it goes back and forth. So we're going to upgrade the skill that is activated when Supergirl has this equipped. And at 0 stars, it's going to increase attack percentage. And then when you cast your ultimate, her AoE damage is going to increase by 5% each time, and it stacks up to 10 times. So as the battle goes on, this legacy piece is going to supercharge Supergirl's damage output, especially against AoE boss fights, so like your Merciless and your Murder Machine battles, even I would say Red Death. But this skill is impactful not just against your AoE targets, but also against really any target, because most of Supergirl's damage is going to be done through her ultimate, which is an AoE ability. So obviously you're going to be seeing way bigger numbers if the AoE is hitting 5 or 6 different targets. But even if it just hits one, you're going to see a ton of damage output because of this legacy piece and just the way her kit works, especially if you're able to get her to full Krypton energy, which is easy to do now with Crypto and Superboy on the team. So let's go over to combat cycle and we'll run one fight. You can see I've already done this, and I was able to get about 75 million with this team using Captain Cold as the 5th. So we'll run this, and I'll give you a little mini teaser for a future video, update video on how to beat Devastator Phase 2. But we'll jump right in here, and I typically try to run these on manual mode. So what you're obviously going to want to do, you want to use Superman's ult on cooldown. We're going to use Superboy and Crypto as much as we can early on to try to get that Krypton energy where we need it to be. I went ahead and hit Captain Cold's ult, and so we'll see what damage Supergirl's able to do here. At about 770k. That's going to continue to ramp up as the fight goes on. Superman's damage typically stabilizes. One thing I've noticed is that after you've done Superboy's ult a few times, automatically it's going to target your Supergirl. But eventually you can swap over to Superman if, especially in a single target fight like this, it will end up giving him a little bit more damage output. But I typically, and I should have used Superboy's ult there first. But typically, you're going to be building Supergirl the most, and so now we've got our Krypton energy at full. We should start seeing some decent damage output from Supergirl as the fight progresses now. Again, we just keep doing everyone on cooldown at this point. Let's see what we get here. 2.7 million. So now it's really starting to ramp up. I think I've seen my version of Supergirl do a 5 or 6 million ult towards the end of the fight. So we're going to see what she's able to do on this one. We're about halfway through. I can go ahead and speed up now because it's not as important to pay attention to kind of who's ulting first at this point. It's really just kind of clicking the buttons as they come up. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are babysitting Crypto, because if not, he'll just go in the corner and cry and look for bones. So always have to hit his a little bit early. I really hate what they've done with his kid in terms of if you're in auto mode, he's just really bad because it takes like 2 or 3 seconds or more for him to ult in auto mode. So he is still good in PvP, but definitely has lost me fights in Meta Brawl because of that. Looking like we should score similar to what we did in the last battle that I did. I'm really happy with that. See what we get here out of one of these last ults. Okay, so we're not critting, but still pretty decent. 2 million, I'll take it. We might get another ult out of Supergirl before this one is over with. Let's see. Come down to the wire. 2 million. Okay, so let's see what we got. 70 million, not too shabby. You can see that Supergirl did 30 million damage here. Typically, she does way more damage than my Superman does. But in this fight, Superman is going to get a little bit more damage in just because it's that single target. And so there's a little bit more efficiency there for him. All right, so now's the moment of truth. We're going to run over to our Supergirl again, and I'm going to upgrade the legacy piece. So we'll go ahead and jump into cast. And you can take note of how the percentages increase as we go up here. We started out at 12% attack, 12% HP. And when we get to 5 white stars, we're going to go from 10% to 15% attack, and then 5% to 10% AoE damage dealt per ultimate cast. Pretty significant. All right, here we go. So we went from 12% attack, 12% HP to 18% attack, 18% HP. You can see here the second skill is what's going to be focused on for the blue stars. I'm probably going to go to a different unique legacy piece next and upgrade that. We'll see. I'll probably talk to some folks and get their opinions on it, but I knew I wanted to make this change and go ahead and try to bolster some of Supergirl's attack before I did anything else. So let's back out of this, and we're going to go ahead and jump back in. Everything else is going to remain the same just for testing purposes. Okay, so we're going to jump back into the fight with our upgraded Supergirl, and we're using the exact same placement, same champions, same legacy pieces. Everything is going to be consistent with the first battle that we did before the upgrade, and we'll see if we can get a little bit higher damage. Now, keep in mind that this game has a lot of random variants, so we very well could see very similar numbers to before the upgrade. But in general, with these longer boss fights like this, we should be seeing significantly more damage on crits, and overall significantly more damage with the champion with the upgraded legacy piece. So we're just going to continue with our same strategy. We'll try to get all the other champions to ult before Supergirl so that her ult is going to be a little bit more powerful each time. And this next time we should be getting full Krypton energy, which is going to help us out a lot with that strategy. Hopefully here we should get more than 2 million with this one. There we go. That's pretty nice. Almost 3 million. At this point, we can pretty much put it on auto because we're just trying to get as many ults off as we possibly can with really all of our champions. We got that Krypton energy where it needs to be, and we're just trying to get Supergirl to do her ult as many times as possible. And another thing we probably should have tested before we did the upgrade was the same strategy, but with instead of Captain Cold, using the Flash. We can definitely test out Flash on Supergirl here and see if we can ramp up her damage significantly from where we're at right now. It's definitely a good strategy. I have been enjoying using Flash with this team because he'll be able to cycle her ultimate to the point where you could probably max out the 10 stacks from the legacy piece, which again is just going to make her damage output really crazy towards the end of a fight. Trying to get that ult off one last time. It's definitely a higher score. Okay, so you remember from the battle that we did at the very start of this test, our Supergirl did around 30 million and she did 36 million here. Again, I think there's some random variance going on where she may have actually outkicked her coverage in that first fight that we did. But I think in general, she's performing much higher with the upgraded legacy piece than she did before. And I think, again, this isn't the perfect thing to be testing her kit on because she's going to excel much more against Murder Machine, against Red Death, as I mentioned, and Merciless. And she's also going to do really well in things like Training Simulator, where there are multiple enemies that she can focus on. I hope you found this video useful, and I'll obviously, as I obtain more magic eyes and upgrade other legacy pieces, I'll be happy to do more testing videos like this if you find them beneficial. So leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this format or this type of kind of testing video, and just in general sharing my thoughts about how I see my roster and roster planning. And as always, if you enjoy this type of content, consider joining the channel as a member and also subscribing to the channel if you would like to get notified every time I have new videos come out. And if not, I'll see you on the next video.